Welcome to Man's Man Monday, a production of the James McGee Show, where it's okay to be masculine, it's okay to be tough, and it's okay to be, well, be a man. Be a man. Join your host, James McGee, on discussions what a man should be and put an end to the toxic masculinity movement.
Today marks the beginning of the 2025 National Police Week, where we honor the men and women who serve our nation as American law enforcement officers. When I think of a man's man, I think of the American policeman, or their uh, heroic, just as brave, and just as vital to the law enforcement profession. But this is Man's Man Monday. There is no bigger example of a man's man than a man who, in this day and age, in this time, in the culture of this nation, to be an American policeman. Last year, I read the script of a radio broadcast that Paul Harvey did back in the 60s. I'm not going to read it this year, but I remember some of the things that were said. Paul Harvey, this is in the 60s, what Paul Harvey said about demand and what a American policeman must be. A counselor, a marriage counselor, a youth counselor, a referee, we expect them to solve the homeless problem. We expect them to solve the drug addiction problem. What we expect from these young men and women is absolutely unbelievable. What's unbelievable is they do it. They make it happen all over this nation every single day. There is no bigger example of a man's man than the American policeman. Last week we spent a lot of time on this show, and I was on one morning, and I'm out of here, and we talked about what went on. I had my friends up there in Ohio, in Cincinnati, who were very close to this situation, where a deputy was killed by the father who was killed, who was justifiably killed by a Cincinnati police officer. So what I want to focus on tonight is I want to talk about choices as a man. And two men made a choice. An 18-year-old and his dad, obviously, for what the actions that he took when he killed a deputy who had nothing to do, not that it mattered, but had nothing to do with his son's death. He was raised by a complete animal, who'd been in prison, who's a criminal, but that's no excuse. When you at 18 years old, you're your own man. You're responsible for what you do. He had a choice to make at 18. The deputy that was killed by his dad, and I'm going to make sure that I get the name right. Before I go further, I said it 100 times last week, but I absolutely want to get the Name right of the deputy that was killed last week. Deputy Larry Henderson was a man's man. At 18 years old, he enlisted in the military, served his country in the military, got out of the military, and became a policeman. Served 30 years, 34 years, I believe. He retired, went back as a special deputy, as a reserve to continue his service. He was an accomplished man, and he, shortly after retirement, going back as a special deputy, as a reserve, was killed in the line of 18 years old. He decided his life was going to be dedicated to this country as a soldier and then as an American policeman. The 18-year-old that was killed had a choice at 18 years old too. Larry Henderson chose to be a man's man. And this punk, this piece of shit, chose to be a robber, a criminal, chose to run from the police, chose to point guns at the police. Therefore, he was shot and killed. Because of the choices that he made. Our lives are about choices. No matter where we come from, the world does not care. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares if your dad was a criminal. Nobody cares that you had to raise yourself. You're responsible. You have to, as a man's man, you have to make those choices that I'm going to, despite, had a rough time. Nobody cares. Had a rough life. Nobody cares. A man's man makes the right choices. Larry Henderson chose a life of service. And this 18-year-old man at 18 chose a different life. If he would have chose the life that Larry Henderson did, probably be alive. All life is about choices. But I want to get back to it, and I want to end with, I am proud to have been an American policeman for over 30 years. You don't hear me talk about, you don't hear me talk about war stories or back in the day and how we did it better, because we didn't. We didn't do it better. There is nothing better than the modern day American policeman. Nothing more of a man's man than the modern day American policeman. I'm proud of my service. I'm proud to have been a small part of such a big fraternity and such a great profession. Nothing I'm more proud of than watching the young men, the young women, and my wife still is on the job and still is an American policeman. Proud of her. But I am proud of every single young man, young woman that has the balls to do this job when very when who in their right mind, let's just say it, who in their right mind would the American Policeman, well, and if my message to each one of you as American policemen is keep doing it. Fuck what people say. Fuck what all these liberals, all these protests, fuck that. Because if not you, then who? Who is going to stand between good and evil for this nation? You are. I love you. I'm proud of you. We've got a lot of stuff coming up this week. We're going to do a couple of shows because it's Police Week, working on some really special guests. But until the next one, McGee is